All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Pierre Demarche. I'm in charge of... I think everyone can hear me. Understanding me, it's another challenge, but that's right. Nearly right. There's an E at the end, but it doesn't matter. So I'm in charge of product management for TeleSign, which also covers strategy and our messaging operation, which is a large activity for us, all our routing activity. When I relocated from Belgium 2 years ago to Los Angeles, I met Alan whilst I was starting doing an internal presentation trying to explain the CPaaS landscape to our shareholder and how TeleSign was positioning in that overall space and what were the respective positioning of the different players. And I think that was the first call with Alan. I didn't know him so well. And he used this qualifier of CPaaS, that is fluffy West Coast bullshit, that I think was the first discussion with Alan. And since then, we've been exchanging about our strategy, and it's been very useful, challenging us in the different direction and strategy decision that we've been taking over the past. So my main objective today is for you to get to know TeleSign, which I learned 3 years ago as I was part of the big merger and acquisition team that acquired the company almost 2 years ago now. It's a company that is really worth knowing from a product and solution point of view. They're servicing the 20 largest internet properties of the world for their core business, which I'm going to explain a little bit more in the presentation. But the people and the culture of the company is also something that is worth knowing. So I want to share a little bit of that with you and also create awareness in this community about the potential respective synergies between our respective business and assets, knowing that TeleSign has a pretty specific and unique positioning in the space between the communication business and the trust and identity business. On top of that, I want to add 2 dimensions to this presentation, which is one of my main focus in my current role. That is, one, how to create value from non-organic, from acquisition in the space that we all know is a very hot topic. And secondly, how to create synergies between telco, software, and tech companies. I'll try to be pretty quick through this presentation and try to keep it as light as possible. So the company was founded in 2005, and I figured that I would give a bit of history and context about how was the tech scene in 2005 before going a bit more in the details. So that's how, for those who forgot how Facebook looked like in 2005, they didn't own the Facebook.com website yet. It's incidentally the Facebook page of our CEO was one of the founders of the company. Actually didn't change so much since 2005. By the end of the year, they reached 6 million end users. The top-selling phone at the time was the Motorola Razr, and it was 2 years before the first iPhone was born. It's quite crazy to think that there was a life before that. Actually, the top-selling product in 2005 was the iPod Nano. So all this to say that there's been a lot of disruption since 2005 on the tech scene, which obviously you all know. But the point I wanted to make is that there's been some constant in the space. One of them is the phone number that for most of us we have owned for multiple years. I may ask a question to the audience. I don't know if some of you own your same phone number since more than 2 years, more than 5 years, some more than 10 years. Oh, all right. I wouldn't dare asking the same question in terms of who's owning the same device since 10 years, but I think the point is pretty clear. Our phone number is an anchor to our identity in the digital economy, and that's what TeleSign has been doing with the largest internet properties of the world, website and app, building solution around our phone number that is enabling communication and trust at the same time. Something that didn't change since 2005 is the Nike logo. That's been the same since inception, but TeleSign has had actually 6 logos since 2005, also marketing oriented. So starting in 2005 with the first logo, TeleSign actually patented the first voice verification solution that was enabling verification of the end user through any transaction process. It was the beginning of chip and PIN in Europe, and there was an increasing number of fraud on stolen credit card in 2005, and adding phone number as an additional security layer within the verification process was showing to be very successful. As this advertisement is showing, it was allowing brands by the introduction of the phone number to reduce the fraud and the number of chargeback on e-commerce platform, for instance. Obviously, as you all know, when you're introducing a fraud prevention system, fraudsters always find a way to bypass it. And in order to bypass giving up their actual phone number, fraudsters starting acquiring anonymous number. You all know that it's very easy to acquire a burner number that is anonymous and very cheap, so that they could use that number instead of giving up their actual number. And that's at the same time that TeleSign launched the first identity product, giving the capability to brands to recognize what was the phone type and the carrier behind the phone number in order to reject any transaction that was not legitimate. Incidentally, this product is still largely used by most of the internet properties of this world, that is preventing the account creation in bulk of illegitimate accounts. A few years later, when TeleSign raised 29 million, they actually acquired a telco. That was already an early indication of the synergies between tech and telecommunication company. The purpose was twofold. On one hand, it was obviously to implement more synergies in terms of delivery of messaging and telecommunication services and improve those telco operations. But secondly, and mainly, it was actually to capitalize on the data and the data attributes around phone number, which was the foundation of the mobile identity business that TeleSign built over the year. In 2012, appreciating the complexity of fraud, TeleSign launched their first Phone ID Score product. That's a reputation score solution that is providing context and trust around phone number globally. It's still the main identity product of TeleSign today. That's obviously been enhanced and optimized since 2012. But the largest internet properties, again, of this world have been rolling this out as part of their verification and security process in order to take any business decision in terms of registration of their user, transaction, onboarding of any end user on their platform. I'll give a little bit more information later. In 2016, that's when I got to know about TeleSign. I was part of the merger and acquisition team of BIX. We entered into discussion with TeleSign at the end of 2016 and directly identified some synergies between the assets of both companies and the respective product strategy. Before giving a bit more detail about BIX, and to be clear, this is a Belgian flag, it's not a German flag, and Belgium is a country, it's not a city, as some may believe. What comes in mind when do you know anything about Belgium, actually? Well, that's very advanced. Most of the people would just talk about waffles and chocolate, beer, sometimes soccer, but no one would know what you just said. It's actually been my life since 2 years. I moved to the US, and assuming I'm taking 2 Uber rides every working day, it's been maybe 800 times I took Uber, and each time the same pattern. I can't hide my accent, so they all ask me if I'm French. I need to justify I'm not French, but Belgian. And then each time one of those topics comes. So I've been discussing at length those 4 topics 800 times probably in the last 2 years. But outside of that and outside of the EU, we have another pride in Belgium. That's a company called BIX. I don't know if any of you is familiar with it. It's one of the largest international carriers worldwide. It's a very established company. In terms of financial size, they're approximately $2 billion, 600 employees distributed globally, headquartered in Brussels. Just a few key data before explaining the synergies with TeleSign. They obviously have a global infrastructure that's covering 180 countries. They're interconnected with most of the mobile and fixed network operators worldwide, which is more than 700. Obviously mastering all telco technologies and platforms and protocol. They were originally international voice transit carrier, which is still the cash cow of the company. They're transiting 26 billion minutes every year, which places them within the top 3 of the international carriers. In terms of mobile data, they're one of the leaders, and just to give you an idea of the scale, they're carrying half of the data roaming traffic internationally. And they've been over the year expanding, obviously, their services to go up on the value chain, leveraging their telco assets to offer solutions like IoT solutions, cloud numbers, and now they're providing some SIP trunking, local SIP trunking capabilities. So we closed the acquisition end of 2017, and it's actually been an extremely successful acquisition. As most of you may know, there are a lot of challenges behind acquisition, especially of that nature, between a telco and a tech company. But we've set up an organization, and one of the few that's been extremely successful, whilst we've kept both companies operating autonomously with their own brand, own management committee. There's been clear synergies that have been identified between both companies that have been leveraged and are still being leveraged and have allowed to accelerate the product strategy of the respective company. So I'm going to try to go quickly a little bit more into what is basically the product strategy of Telesign, what we do, and how the synergies with the telco can translate into those strategies. So mobile identity is obviously the core business of Telesign. It's providing trust solution to website, internet properties, any companies that has digital experience with their end user in order to allow them through the journey of their end user to provide authentication solution, trust verification of the identity, credit score, context around the communication and the engagement. Here, obviously, there is an acceleration of that synergy strategy with BICS because they have reached to all the carriers worldwide, and as I said, they're producing a lot of traffic data from their messaging business, from their voice business, and this is all context around phone number that we are using in our identity platform in order to provide trust solution to the internet properties. Our authentication business, which is the core since the inception of the company, is providing two-factor authentication, SMS and voice, which is still a pretty steady growing market. We see more and more technology companies still rolling that technology, and as you may know, companies like Google, again, stated not so long ago how two-factor authentication, SMS two-factor authentication, is preventing almost 100% of phishing and account takeover attempt of their end user on their platform. So here with BICS, we've been able to reinforce our competitive edge and leadership in the space by providing even more secure direct connection with the carrier worldwide, and obviously optimizing our cost structure as well, which in comparison to other software players gives us a competitive edge, having access to a telco cost base. And then our communication pillar is actually an extension of the first two pillars that leverage the capabilities that were built in terms of security and authentication to provide voice solution, messaging solution that are not only security and authentication related, which also enable us to generate additional trusts, so some additional data components and data attributes that we're using in our identity platform. So actually there's an underlying strategic rationale to our communication pillar for our identity strategy, but also we see, and that's where I said that we have a positioning that is at the intersection of what most of you are providing, an identity, as we see more and more customer opportunity where we're landing with our identity solution, but then require to add a communication solution on top, as companies appreciate that at every steps of the end user journey, you're exposed to fraud risk, identity requirements, trust requirement, but also communication requirement. So that's the most I can share from the data, internal data of the company since the acquisition, but just to show how since the closing with BICS, we've been increasing and accelerating the business. We've more than doubled the number of transactions, so we're reaching almost 12 billion actually this year, which is 2 times more than in 2017, which shows how synergies with the telco can, when it's well managed, accelerate the product strategy. In terms of people grow, we're expecting to end 2020 at more than 400 people, which is, again, a significant growth since 2017. And just to close this presentation that's leading into the session that we'll have this afternoon, again, I want to highlight how, for us, there is a direct correlation between trust and communication/engagement. at every step of the journey of an end user on a platform, you require communication solution that most of you are providing, being voice, SMS, RCS, WebRTC, video, anything. But at every step, you're equally exposed to some identity requirements or fraud risks which require identity solution that we're providing. And that's where our positioning at the intersection of the two spaces could create synergy with other communication providers. That's it for me.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.